This is Gabriela on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. We have a real treat for you just around the corner, and that is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Jeff is the owner of Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and he will be coming to you weekly to teach you more about empowered living. Now, let's join Jeff already in the studio.
Hello and welcome. This is Jeff Byrd, Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and this is Empowered Living. Our topic today is titled Standing Strong When Life is Unfair. Now, most of us have experienced that at times life can be unfair. Sometimes it can be extremely unfair. However, our future is never determined by the unfair things that happen to us, but by our response to them. Now, the illustration I want to share today is from a man who had way more than his fair share of unfair things happen to him. But because of his exceptional response, he ended up with miraculous results. The man we're going to look at is found in the book of Genesis, and his name is Joseph. Now, it's interesting that the name Joseph in the Hebrew comes from the same word that Jesus is from, Yeshua. It means one who saves, Savior. Now, I'm not going to have time to tell you the entire story of Joseph. I'm going to summarize it for you, but it's found in Genesis chapters 37 through 45, if you would like to take a few minutes and have some exceptional reading and a very engaging story. But this man, Joseph, he's got 10 brothers, but Joseph is the favorite of the father, and the father shows that openly, which causes no small amount of disgruntledness with his brothers. In addition to some dreams that he has where he sees himself as ruling over them and them bowing down to him, even the parents bowing down to him. And he kind of unwisely tells the brothers these dreams, and that makes them hate him even more. So much so that at one point they're out tending their flocks, and Joseph's father, Jacob, sends him out to check on them. And when they see him coming, they decide to kill him. But one of the brothers intervenes, and he says, no, that's too extreme. Let's not kill him. Let's just dig a pit, or I guess the pit was already dug. Let's just throw him in a pit, and then we'll sell him to somebody who comes along. So that's what they do. They throw him in a pit, and when some traders come along, they pull him up out of the pit and they sell him to the traders. The passage reads, this is Genesis 37:28. Then some Midianite traders passed by, so they pulled him up and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. So here he is. He's hated by his family. He's disowned. He's almost killed and sold as a slave into a foreign country. Now, Joseph could have responded some different ways. He could have just been bitter. I mean, it would have been so easy just to dwell on that scenario and that rejection and this tremendous injustice and just become bitter and good for nothing and maybe become a drunk or something else that's just kind of good for nothing. But that's not what Joseph does. We're told that the Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. Now, this is after he's been purchased as a slave by an Egyptian man by the name of Potiphar. We're told that he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian, and in this condition of slavery, God calls him a successful man because the Lord was with him. And everything that he did prospered, and this man Potiphar trusted him greatly, and so he put him in charge of all his household, everything. And apparently he had great wealth, and he had lots of other people that worked for him, and he put him in charge of everything and just let Joseph run all his affairs. Now, the problem that came to Joseph was that Potiphar's wife had a thing for him. And when they were alone multiple times, she would come to him and say, lie with me. And Joseph would say, I can't do this. I can't sin against the Lord by doing this. This is wrong. Can't wound my master Potiphar this way. He's given me everything but you. But she's persistent. And one day when they're alone in the house, she grabs him and says, lie with me. And Joseph runs. But she's hanging on, and he has this outer tunic on, and she has hold of that, and he flees, and she ends up with this tunic in her hand. And rather than be disgraced, she decides she's going to spin the story around. And so she screams, And when the other people come, that she says, oh, this Hebrew slave that you brought in, he's come to make a mockery of me. He came to try to force me to lie with him, and I screamed, and he ran and left this tunic in my hand. So not only now has he been rejected by his family, sold as a slave into a foreign country, now people are making up lies again. So Potiphar comes home, and his wife tells him this made-up, fabricated story, and Potiphar's very angry, but he doesn't have him killed, which is unusual. It seems like maybe there's a little benefit of the doubt that he gives Joseph, but he does have him thrown in prison. And we don't know how long he initially is in prison, but now he's in prison. Now he's rejected by his family, almost killed, sold as a slave into a foreign country, has lies and false accusations against him. Now he's in prison. And we're told here that Joseph's master took him and put him into the jail, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the jail. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. The jailer committed to Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper. These are some outrageous circumstances. I mean, this would make the basis for a really intriguing movie that would have us all in outrage at how this guy's being treated. But we're told 3 times in this passage that the Lord was with him, the Lord was with him, the Lord was with him. See, our circumstances do not make us or break us. It's who's with us in our corner that makes or breaks us. Someone in the worst circumstances can be a success when the Lord's with us. So what happens is Joseph's there for some period of time, and God's given him this favor. Now he's in charge of the jail, and there's these 2 guys that are thrown into prison. The king has them, the Pharaoh, thrown into prison, and one of them is the baker, and another's the cupbearer to the king. And they have these crazy dreams. You can read about them. They're in the prison. They're talking about this, and God gives Joseph the interpretation of the dreams. And he tells the baker, he says, well, your dream means that you're going to be hanged. And he tells the cupbearer some better news. Your dream means that you're going to be restored and be the cupbearer to the king again. And sure enough, both those things happen. The baker's hanged and the cupbearer's restored. And Joseph asks the cupbearer, he says, when you get restored, would you please remember me and get me out of this prison? And so the cupbearer is restored to his place and forgets Joseph for 2 full years. Not 2 partial years, 2 full years. 730 days. Can you just imagine that? Here's Joseph. He's in this prison. He's had this miraculous God-given interpretation of this guy's dream that came to pass, and the guy's restored, and he completely forgets that. How do you forget that? And every day, can't you just see Joseph waking up going, well, maybe this is the day he's going to remember me and I'm going to get out of this prison. Maybe he's praying in the morning, God, please help the cupbearer to remember that, the interpretation you gave me and get me out of this prison. But 2 years pass in the prison, and Joseph is still faithful. He's still trusting. The Lord's still with him and prospering in that situation. And he's still not out of it. But what happens is another miraculous thing happens. Pharaoh has a couple of dreams. And he's very perplexed by them, has no idea what they mean. And then the cupbearer remembers, oh, yeah, there was this Hebrew guy in the prison with me, and he says, I remember my sins this day. I forgot all about this guy. But yeah, he interpreted the dream, said, you were going to restore me. Pharaoh restored me. Now, here I am, the cupbearer. He said, and this guy is one that can interpret dreams. So Pharaoh goes and gets him out of the prison. They wash him and clean him up, and he brings him before him. And he tells him the dream, and God gives him the interpretation. He says, I hear that you can interpret dreams. He says, it's not me. He says, God interprets the dreams. He just gives them to me. So he told him the dreams, and Joseph interpreted what it meant, that there was going to be 7 years of abundance and bounty in the harvest and in the productivity of the land. And then it was going to be followed by 7 years of famine. So Joseph told Pharaoh, he says, this is what the dream means, and what you should do is during the 7 years of plenty, you should build storehouses all over the land and store up so that you'll have enough for the 7 years of famine. And we're told then that Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all this, and there is no one so discerning and wise as you are, you shall be over my house, and according to your command, all my people shall do homage. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put the gold necklace around his neck. He had him ride in his second chariot, and they proclaimed before him, "Bow the knee." And he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphanath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, as his wife. And Joseph went forth over the land of Egypt. In one afternoon, because of God's grace and goodness and the wisdom he gave him, he took Joseph from the prison to the throne room and put him in charge over the entire land. Everyone had to bow the knee when Joseph came through. No one could raise a hand or a foot in Egypt without Joseph's permission. Because of his faithfulness, God blessed him, he raised him up, and he put him in charge. Now here's what's happened. The years of abundance come, and they store up, and it says that they stored so much that they had more grain than the sand of the sea, and Joseph stopped counting because the amount they had was innumerable. They had abundance and more than abundance. But what happens is now the famine sets in, and back down where the brothers and the family are from, they've got some famine coming. So Jacob the father tells them, "Hey, you need to go to Egypt and see if you can make a bargain or do something and get us some food, because we need it." And so the brothers come to Egypt, and wouldn't you know, who's in charge of giving out the grain? Yeah, it's Joseph, the one they almost killed and sold as a slave all those years before. So they have to come before him, and they don't recognize him. And there's an interesting story that goes on. He sends them back a couple of times, makes them bring back the little brother Benjamin, but they don't know who he is, but he knows who they are, but he hides it from them. Until I think it's the third time that they're back, he can't take it anymore. He just breaks down. He goes alone, and he weeps so loudly that all the Egyptians hear it, and he finally comes before him, and he reveals himself to them. And this is how the passage reads. He says, "Then Joseph said to his brothers, 'I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?' But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence." It means they were terrified when they saw him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they came closer. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now therefore it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry up and go to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, and you and your household and all that you have would be impoverished. Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept on them, and afterwards his brothers talked with him. Because of the faithfulness of this man, and his lack of bitterness, and his trust with God and God's presence with him, in spite of all that happens to him, in one afternoon, he saves 2 nations and becomes ruler over all of Egypt. He saves Egypt by the interpretation God gives him of the dream, and he saves this family who will become the nation Israel. 2 nations that are still here thousands of years later, because one man was faithful in the midst of unfair circumstances. Drawing from this incredible story of Joseph, I'd like to give you 9 things to remember when unfairness, mistreatment, things that are